everyone. Sorry, a few minutes behind. Welcome to the council meeting work session for May 12th. Our meetings are public, and you're welcome to join us in person or by watching from the council agenda page, Zoom or YouTube. I hope you continue to join us whichever manner you feel the most comfortable. This is a work session during which there is no public comment. You can join us on May 19th during our 7 p.m. formal meeting to share your comments. We, of course, welcome your feedback anytime by mail to P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114. You can also email us at council.comments@slc.gov, or you can call our 24-hour phone line, 801-535-7654. Every time that a comment comes through, email or message or mail, is shared with all of the council members. It is also posted at slc.gov/council. Our first agenda item is the fiscal year 2026-2027 budget administration's overview and fiscal year 2026-2027 administration revenue update. We're going to hear those two items together, and we're going to welcome Mary Beth Thompson, Chief Financial Officer and Salt Lake City Wizard, to help us through this.
Okay, whoa, Salt Lake already has a wizard, and he sells necklaces. Budget wizard, yeah.
Budget wizard.
You can be the budget wizard.
Sorry for that delay. So we're going to go over, I'll highlight a few things at the very beginning, then Lisa's going to discuss revenues. I will come back with expenditures, and stop us at any point in time if you have questions as we go forward with this. So, next slide, please. So kind of just want to highlight a few things on the proposed, specifically general fund budget. There are $13.2 million in cuts across all general fund departments. There's a reduction of one-time funding for ongoing operations. We made strategic investments as increases for public safety, emergency response, and community services. We added a few staffs in the public demands and growing in the public where demand is growing. Eliminated or streamlined positions and programs no longer needed, resulting in a 1.57 overall budget increase. That says 1.72, but it actually changed to only 1.57. Next slide, please.
So the general fund revenue budget for FY27 is $498 million. I just want to go over a couple of the major changes from the previous year so that you can see those highlights. The property tax category is increasing by about $18 million. As you know, this budget recommends a property tax increase of $13.5 million. The other portion of that increase is a $2.5 million estimated new growth, and we also have 2.5 estimated revenue from the inland port. So those things are shown there. The sales and use tax category is increasing by about $4.7 million, and I would say that the increase in sales tax is really mostly related to inflationary factors. It's not really a true growth of the sales and use tax, but an inflationary factor that was pretty conservative that we put into the budget here. The next category where you're seeing some increases is in licenses and permits. We are seeing increased business license applications, and in the permit area, we're projecting a one-time $2.3 million permit revenue coming in from the LDS Church for the North Temple, or for the Temple Square reopening. One of the other areas in licenses and permits that you'll see an increase is we looked for many ways to increase revenues in this budget before the proposal of the property tax increase. And one of them is in this area in two places. We are proposing to license short-term rentals that are in approved zones. We previously haven't been licensing those, so this will give us a chance to license those. It's a small increase in revenue, about $177,000. The other area here where there's an increase is in what we're proposing to do is expand the parking tax revenue to other parking lots that the city either owns or supports. Currently, mostly that revenue comes from the airport parking, so this would expand that about $500,000 in revenue we're proposing from that. The other area that we're seeing an increase is in the area of fines. This is mostly related to parking fines. We did propose an increase to all parking fines in this budget, with an emphasis on safety-related parking fines. So, you know, anything blocking an intersection, blocking a driveway, things like that are seeing a substantial increase. In parking meter collections, as you know, you guys approved an increase to parking meter rates and an expansion to the time that parking meters are in force. And we're seeing really good success with those increases. So that revenue is projected to increase by about $1.7 million. A small increase to interest income just based on our pool funds. The other changes in this budget are really related to transfers. And, you know, last year we had quite a few one-time transfers in that we used to balance the budget. It's kind of one of our sources of pride this year is that we've reduced the amount or our reliance on one-time funds, including our use of fund balance. So the transfers you'll see them reducing by about $13 million, and that's really us just reversing the transfers from last year. Also, our use of fund balance this year is reduced by about $8.6 million. Any questions?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Going back to the sales tax, I wanted to finish the whole revenue side of the house. On the sales tax, is this consistent with what we're seeing so far in our receipts? I know we're 2 months, we're always lagging 2 months on the sales tax, but is this consistent, the $184 million and the $188 million, consistent with what we're seeing right now as far as sales tax revenue is for this fiscal year?
Yeah, so we received December's numbers, and they came in a little bit higher, which allowed Andrew, who's not here, who's floating the Grand Canyon right now. That's why Lisa and I are here. Anyway, he increased that a little bit for fiscal year 2027 because of the result of our December numbers coming in at the end of March. So that's good news, but it's still keeping up with basically inflation. It's basically keeping up with just CPI.
Yeah.
There's not any real new growth per se. It's just inflation.
It's dollar, but that's still what that's, right. But it is consistent. That was really my question. Was it consistent with what we're seeing so far, just number-wise? And so I appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Carlson.
I see here that we have the continued use of fund balance to help balance the budget for this year. Help me think about fiscal year 2028 and what might be available to us in terms of our fund balance. I know we're not even through 27 yet, but I'm thinking about in the future what options might be available to us in regards to fund balance, because it looks like we almost for the past few years have been drawing down from that account rather than adding to that account.
We have, and the fund balance sits anywhere right with this budget between 12.07 and 12.78, I believe. I'll have to get you those numbers. They're on my. So that's below the 13% the council wants to stay at. Now, remember, this is projections. It does not include revenues coming in fiscal 2026. It does not include also expenditures dropping from 2026. So it could be higher. Last year, we projected about a 12% fund balance. It came in at about, I'll have to pull up the slide, but it came in higher. So it most likely, our fund balance will be higher than 12.4%, which is where we have it currently with the MRB.
I think, can you speak to the other revenue items that, that the city will be investigating in advance of next year's budget? So I'm thinking of the transportation utility fee and potentially a venue tax. Those were both items that were too complex to put in place for this budget cycle, but I think would be on the table for a next year's budget balancing.
Yeah, so we've seen several cities around Utah that are actually proposing a transportation utility fee. Our study has been completed, but after reviewing how difficult it would be to implement, you have to put it on a public utilities billing system. And as we know, public utilities is going through transition right now. So in order to put it on the legacy system, it would cost us a lot of money, and then we'll transfer it to the new system. But that is something that we will be working towards this next fiscal year, for fiscal year 2027, to hopefully the mayor will bring back in fiscal year 2028 as a revenue source. So I think that that will help so that we don't have to use as much fund balance next year to the tune of $18 million, because we probably won't have $18 million next year. And I think, Councilmember Carlson, that was your point, is that will we have $18 million to use in fund balance? Probably not. And then the other one is looking at other taxes and really doing some investigation and getting down to the other things that the state statute allows us to charge that we haven't charged in the past. So between those revenue sources, I hope that we can reduce this fund balance next year in fiscal year 2028. I think it's always been the intent of the mayor that this was going to take a couple, if not 3 years, to get that fund balance or operational expenditures and revenues in balance. So we always knew it was going to take 2 to 3 years.
Council members? Okay.
Next slide, please. You could skip that one. This is just kind of an overview of the changes I spoke about. A little history of property tax revenue, just so you can see graphically what our property tax has done. This is broken out by the major categories of property taxes. Next slide. Wanted to talk just a little bit about the property tax increase and its impact, the areas that are being affected by that property tax that we intend to use it for in this proposed budget. Broken out by the fire department at about 1.8, public lands maintenance, criminal justice, our youth and family division, also a portion for street lighting, a portion of it going to sustainability, a large portion, more than half, going to capital improvement projects, and some of it to our fleet maintenance. And if you move to the next slide,
Sorry, really quick before we move on to the next slide. I just wanted to flag this for council members. This is a little bit of a different process than we've had in the past. I think if you remember in the past, we kind of thought about the budget as a whole. You guys would make changes to the budget as a whole, and then depending on if the revenue was sufficient, that's what kind of taught us if we needed a tax increase. The way state legislation is now, the mayor is required and the council is required to adopt specifically what a property tax increase would be paying for. So ultimately, in our budget adoption documents, you guys will have to be comfortable with whatever that number adds up to, whether it's 13.5 million or something less, and what it's paying for.
Thanks, Jen. The next slide, please. So this is, because CIP is the largest portion of that, I just wanted to highlight the projects that were selected in CIP to be funded by the property tax. We have 1.9 million, 1.8 million for Vision Zero corridors and safety improvements, 1.1 for facilities replacement and removal. There's $1 million for the city's 50% share of Sugar House Park culinary water line replacement, 950,000 for the Washington Park septic expansion, 627,000 for street reconstruction, 450 for urban trails, 300,000 for the Jordan Park sewer and stormwater infrastructure improvements, and then 50,000 for bike racks throughout the city. Any questions about that? Next slide. A little graph here on our sales tax revenues, and so you can see the history there, and the small projected increase we have for FY27. Next slide.
I think that last slide actually illustrates well how our fund balance grew significantly in the aftermath of 2020. I think the city took a very small c conservative approach to setting the sales tax budget, and because our actuals were significantly higher than what was budgeted, that is all money that gets deposited into fund balance. I think the same would be true this year. We take a conservative approach this year that will replenish our fund balance if those sales tax receipts actually come in higher. So that's another way that fund balance can grow or not.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. That next slide. So this slide breaks down the gross point of sale tax receipts in the sectors where we're seeing those revenues come in. And I do want to emphasize this is an estimate here based on the first few months of actuals that we have access to. But it's following our typical trend, you know, that retail trade is the largest sector, followed by wholesale trade and then restaurants and food sales. Any questions?
Yeah. Can you define for me I think I know what wholesale trade is, but if you could just define it for me.
Do you have a good definition for that?
Thanks. Wholesale trade is construction material that we use, that we collect sales tax on.
Any other questions on that slide? Next slide, please. I'll turn the time over to Mary Beth to talk to you about the expenditures.
So this is the overall city expenditures. Last year, or the current fiscal year, we sat at $1.9 billion, and in fiscal year 27, we sit at $2 billion. The general fund, you can see, like Lisa said, on the revenue side, is increasing 7.7 million. Airports increasing 115 million. Public utilities 17 million. Other funds at 12 million. Internal service funds at 4 million. Capital improvement fund is decreasing, and that's because we used several funding sources in fiscal year 2026 from one-time fund balance. Examples would be transportation tax, the fifth, right? So we went and looked at their fund balance for that year and put it into CIP in fiscal year 2026. Next slide, please. So this is kind of showing you just in a pie chart what it looks like. General fund, obviously the three biggest contributors are the general fund, the airport, and public utilities. Next slide, please. So of the general fund, some departments are seeing a decrease and some departments are seeing an increase. That increase is based on the information I provided earlier in the slide deck, right? Public safety, new FTEs. Economic development has a decrease. A portion of that is personal services ledger. One of the things to note is that URS gave us our percentage rates and they decreased this year. So that means if you look in key changes, you will see a decrease in every single department under the retirement area, specifically for non-contributory, because their return on investments better, so they can reduce our percentage to them. So that is a decent savings for us, and a big win. Justice courts obviously looks very large here, but 50% of this is from BA4 for the FTEs that we approved in BA4, because you have to capture that in your budget. Even though you've captured it in budget amendment number 4, you also have to bring that into your regular budget. Mayor's office saw a reduction. The attorney's office, this 211 is also based on FTEs for the prosecutor's office in BA4, and then an additional 2 prosecutors' assistants in fiscal year 2027. Finance department is showing a decrease of $193 million. E911 is showing a decrease of $770. 50% of this is from telephone services that were provided 3 years ago, but now since we've gone to VEC, we no longer have to pay for that service. So 50% of $350,000 of that is from that service. Public lands, majority of this sits as new property increases. The public services, the biggest portion of public services, that $1 million, is one contract where we have the clean team now. Public services has found efficiencies in that clean team, so we could reduce the expenditures from a contract. Fire that increase includes new firefighters for a new fire truck, and police, obviously, that seems like a large number, but remember that we have the biggest portion of that number right there is from the Utah Inland Port that is in budget amendment number 5, or $2.5 million of that is from there, where they are requesting 13 new FTEs to help with the West Side operations.
And is it accurate to say that those are essentially funded through the property tax that we're receiving from the Inland Port transfer? Is that right?
Yes, so these are actually an agreement that we did with Utah Inland Port. They're actually giving us $2.5 million, roughly $2.5 to $3 million on a yearly basis to fund these officers. It's a wash, correct. Next slide, please. Well, I think I've done some of this, but let's talk a little bit further into some of the major changes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. I just
Yes.
want to kind of like emphasize that on that police side of the house, there's, on that line, it's $7.7 million and whatever the percentage is, but $2.5 million is coming from the Inland Port agreement or ordinance or bill on their tax increment. So we're getting 2.5 on the revenue side of the house, and we're getting 2.5 on the expense side of the house. So that $7 million is really closer to 5.5 or 4.5 million, and in expenditures.
Yes.
And because people will say, oh, that's a big jump there. Yes, it is, but we're also getting paid for that. It's not an increase in our expense.
Correct. The other portion of this that is, there's two folds to this being very large. One is we have 2 SROs also in this budget. Those have a 50% offset in salaries. The other one is we have moved social workers out of non-departmental, which I'm very excited about, back into the police department. So we no longer cover that expenditure inside non-departmental. It will sit in the police department. So those are the biggest reasons why it appears that it's a large number, but really it's not as large as it appears because it's moving from department to department. At $2 million is social workers, so $2 million from social workers, $2.5 million from Utah Inland Port, that's $4.5 million. The SROs are another $400,000 approximately. So as I continue to talk about it, it just gets smaller. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we looked at is vacancy savings. Vacancy savings in this fiscal year. So the administration has been preparing for this tough budget since January. They did a hiring freeze starting in January. They also did no raises with vacancy savings in January as well. That is going to attribute to a vacancy savings in the current fiscal year, which you can see in key changes, but what it does is it's basically a reduction to your fund balance. So that's part of that 18 million at 6.6 million. Part of it is vacancy savings, but until that vacancy savings comes to fruition, I have to put it as a fund balance number until it comes to fruition after we do the reconciliations for next fiscal year. The other thing that the mayor has proposed in this budget is a vacancy savings for all departments in the general fund for the fiscal year 2027. So that means, and that vacancy savings, we put it in vacancy savings, but they can either hold a position vacant, they can use it through attrition, or if they have to, they can cover it through operational budget. One of the things that I say is you can't use above-the-line funding, which is personal services funding, for operational, but you can use operational for personal services. So we have given the direction to the departments that however they choose to come up with that savings, that will be their choice. The other thing is the elimination of 8 positions, 3 park rangers, 3 from finance, and 2 from HR. We eliminated low-use programs. We ended and reduced consulting and outreach contracts. That's the contract I was talking about in public services. Several departments reduced operating expenses for travel, supplies, tools. Consolidated service contracts, moving more work in-house. Reduce subsidies to programs that are no longer need them. So the $1 million for the clean contract, $1.3 million for the golf subsidy. We were subsidizing golf from the general fund to the tune of $1.8 million. We still have a transfer from the general fund to golf to the tune of $500,000 for their ESCO payment. $622,000 was trimmed from public services costs, and that ranges anywhere from travel to cleaning supplies. Police have a $715,000 vacancy savings. Those are civilians, so that's a hold for civilians. $350 from 911, which we already talked about, and then ending the Hive Pass. So that totals approximately $13.2 million in vacancy savings. Next slide, please. So we were talking about fund balance. So as you can see, for fiscal year 2025, we had 25.8%. That percent moved up to fiscal year 2026. In last year, when we proposed the budget, we had it at about 12.7. I'd have to confirm that, but I think 12.7. But when you bring into account the revenues dropping to fund balance and the expenditures not being used, we had 25.8%, which was our beginning fund balance percentage for fiscal year 2026. Right now, we sit at 16.48%, and in the MRB, it's 12.4%. One of the things that Jennifer and I spoke about yesterday is this fund balance number. So as you notice, the 485 does not match with the 498. That the difference is the 13.5 million in property tax, because I didn't know how to include it or exclude it with the new legislation, so I excluded it. The other thing is in that projected revenue is our fund balance number at 18 million. I don't believe that fund balance is a revenue, right? It's a one-time from our savings account. It's not necessarily a revenue. So that's why I state that percentage could go anywhere from 12.07 to 12.78 based on what number you pick for your revenue starting value. Does that make sense?
The other, I think, unique conundrum that the legislation created is that even if the council ends up approving the mayor's proposal going forward with 13.5 million, that money isn't real until after the Truth in Taxation hearing in August. And so it's not real until the first day of September. And so I guess, and maybe this is a question that we have to pose with the tax commission of like, how do we, if we end up close to that 10% threshold where it actually is starting to affect our, and I hope we don't end up there, but if we do, which numbers are the legal ones that we have to abide by in terms of calculating? So future us problem, but I think the finance department flagged, I think, a really important issue of how those numbers work and the timing of it.
Mr. Chair.
Just go ahead.
On that subject, so if that's true, then can you start hiring people before that taxation? You have to wait until that truth in taxation date? So we've always used 10 months based on the date that, hey, you got your budget July 1st, it's going to take you 2 months to get a new hire, so we'd say 10 months for the first year of salary. Is it now, should it be 8 months if it's going to take us a month and a half to get the truth in taxation date?
We put it in at 10, and
Yeah.
let me tell you, because the majority of the FTEs that are being funded are firefighters, and the chief starts his new class the middle of September. So it will be almost a true 10 months. We had that discussion
Okay.
with Chief Lieb, and it will be almost a true 10 months.
Okay, thanks.
I do think, though, that is the strategy that, and that we discussed at the Utah League of Cities and Towns as well, is to the extent that FTEs are funded by the property tax increase, we do hold off on funding them until September. I think the fact that half of the property tax increase is going into CIP is also helpful because you guys don't approve that until the end of August anyway, and so that kind of naturally is held off until September. And then the other expenditures, I think, will similarly sit in a restricted account, and from an accounting perspective, they'll figure out that magic, and so that things don't get spent until September.
Go ahead.
Can you remind me the council policy or just best practice regarding fund balance percentages, and at what limit does it affect our credit rating?
So rating agencies like us to stay above 10%. Council likes to stay above 13%. Mary Beth Thompson, speaking truly, likes to stay between 15 and 18%. And I will say Mary Beth Thompson likes that because that's what I like. So if I had my comfort zone, would sit at 15%.
Councilmember Erica Carlson is inclined to agree with a higher fund balance because you never know what could happen.
Next slide, please.
I think that's a good point that, it's always like hard to like balance the need and, where the money comes from and having a healthy savings account, but at the same time, balancing the needs of the city and tax increases or not, and proposing a tax increase to tell the neighbors that we need a lot of savings just in case is also a hard sell, but it's the prudent thing to do as well. So I think balancing all these decisions is always very, very, very rough, but that information was very useful. And there's more to the presentation, right? No? Okay. Any more last questions, council members? Last questions for now, because I'm sure we're going to have more questions. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. Council members, item number 3, which was fiscal year 2026-2027 budget staff overview, is going to be adjusted to a future council meeting. Jump into item number 4, which is the fiscal year 2026-2027 budget finance department. So welcome back. I'm glad that you didn't leave too far. We're going to hear a little presentation for the finance department. Ben Ladke is going to join you on the table.
Yeah, I was telling Lisa, I'm like, well, we get everything done all at once. So that's terrific. So we're just going to highlight a few things in the finance department where our decreases were and where our increases are. This is our mission statement, and so I won't read it to you, but that is our mission statement. Next slide, please. So kind of want to highlight some accomplishments. We, along with several departments and the mayor's office in the city, have established a 6-year capital asset plan. We are very, very proud of this. It sits in the back of the CIP book, and we'd love to come back to you and kind of show you that and tell you that during this budget process. Very exciting. Jennifer knows how long it's taken us to get a capital asset plan, and I am completely thrilled with how well it has come to fruition, and thankful for all the departments that have helped us get this capital asset plan completed, because it's been a lift. The other one is we have at this point in draft the financial excellence strategic plan. So it's a finance plan. It goes through certain things like, when you should bond, how you should deal with your investments, how you should budget, how you should do accounting. So it goes through all of that. Then it also will create a creation of the City Finance Committee. That committee will work with the CIP committee in order to help with the funding sources as we move forward. And it will also create a subcommittee for administrative audit, so that they will be making the decisions on the audit plan. We've created a simplified pamphlet for the version of the budget book, which is really exciting. We also don't have on here, but hopefully we'll have in the next couple of months, a completed what we call PAFR, which is a pamphlet ACFR. So if you ever have to go through and look at the ACFR, it's really boring. I mean, it's really good to read if you want to go to sleep, but the PAFR is something that is easily explainable to residents of Salt Lake City. It's about 8 pages. I'm really excited. A lot of larger cities have this. Houston, Atlanta, San Diego, they all have a PAFR. So we are close on getting that completed. And we will be moving that along with the ACFR, which we do in December 31st, so that it can go to GFOA for the GFOA Excellence Award. Developed an administrative appeals process for civil citations. This will help reduce the small claims at the justice courts, and now those will be brought in-house, and the administrative appeals process will be in-house, so we don't have bogging down the small claims system. And we implemented a new investment software system. So, next slide, please. Some of the areas that we have found efficiencies is in Workday. Workday has, as painful as I look back 2.5 years ago it was, and all I wanted to do was cry every day. I'm not crying now, and it has created great efficiencies, and I'm really excited to see the system grow and mature. So with that, we've decentralized accounts payable invoices, so all invoices now are input through the departments, which is exciting. They used to actually bring them to us, and we used to input them and process them. Same thing with POs. We would take the invoice and would match it to the goldenrod on the PO, and then we'd key it in. We don't have to do any of that anymore. That all sits inside the departments. The automation of the fixed asset depreciation calculation, this used to take us months in the legacy system, and now it takes us a week to do this depreciation schedule, so that's very exciting as well. And then Salesforce contract management. So we did have a contract management system, I guess that's what you'll call it, but with the assistance of Cindy Lou, the recorder's office, and procurement, we now have a true contract management system. It's called ALMA, where all contracts are routed through the system, which also ensures that the recorder's office gets the information with all the proper signatures, which is really exciting for all of us, specifically when, I've gone and done research and said, where's this contract? And the recorder's office in previous would say, we don't have that contract, we're not sure where it is. This ensures that all contracts make it to the recorder's office and are recorded properly. So that was a great team effort between the recorder's office and procurement. And it also reduced our record recording by about 8 days. So Adaptive planning is where we're moving to now. This is exciting and scary. We will be doing all of our budgets on adaptive planning. Cross my fingers. I will have the MRB completed by October, the MRB for fiscal year 2027, in adaptive planning for October. What this means for council and council staff is that we will no longer be posting the MRB into Workday because it's really not a real budget. It will all live in adaptive. Council staff will do all of their work in adaptive. We can create scenarios on demand in adaptive. It will be a very powerful tool. It's going to take a lot of work, but we have a great team that's very excited to start this work. We started it now with the personnel. Personnel right now is currently being done by Excel spreadsheets, so that will be very exciting to not have to do personnel by Excel spreadsheet any longer. Next slide, please. So our current budget is 13.6, and our cut scenario is 192,000. Total budget will be 13.4. Next slide, please. We have a revenue for interest income at $95K. We also have an expense offset to that revenue of $95K. That's for interest income and interest expense, mainly due to our investment in our investment company. Personal services are reduced by $168,000, and charges and service by $120,000. Next slide, please. I won't read through these. I'll kind of talk through them a little bit. All three of these positions have the reason that we put them on our 5% cut for the mayor is because of efficiencies. 2 of them from Workday efficiencies, and 1 just because procurement does things very differently. So we put 3 FTEs cut from the finance department. Next slide, please. And then the other thing we did was we will be eliminating the contract with program-based budgeting. We won't need that program-based budgeting software package anymore because we're going to move it into Adaptive. So Adaptive, along with our regular budgeting software, will also be our program-based budgeting software package. So we won't need a separate software package that we have to integrate into the systems. And then we did $20,000 in travel and training. Next slide, please. That's it.
Go ahead then, Ruben, Councilmember.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I remember 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, when we discussed implementing Workday, and we knew it was going to have some efficiencies, but we also knew it was going to be a lot of work beyond that, and also a lot of training and ongoing training so that we don't step back and go back to our spreadsheets and Excels and our pivot tables, and now we can use Workday. And I appreciate that, we're seeing that fruition in what you just presented here. Do you see that same efficiencies going through other departments as we get more mature, or are they already seen their efficiencies in their need for additional hours to do a job, meaning either additional people or that they can do more in less hours and save money in other ways?
That's a good question. I don't know at this point that we have reviewed that completely for me to give you an accurate answer. I think that specifically when it comes to the new Adaptive, or what we will call the budget software package, I think that they could see some efficiencies inside the departments because they won't be doing this manual Excel spreadsheet process, which I'm very excited about in that area.
Yeah, because I'm thrilled that you, as finance, you came up with and said, hey, we don't need this. I'm just looking at other departments. Is there other efficiencies that we're not seeing, or they're not stating in a need? So
maybe. I think, it's a lot of soft costs, and it's also how you do things, right? I mean, you have to figure out how to do things a little differently, right? And where you can change and move things around. One of the things with one of the positions that we eliminated was some redundancy between IMS and the finance department. And so, I went to Zach and said, we're seeing some redundancies here. Can we team up? so that we can create some efficiencies inside the finance and IMS departments. So do I think that they're out there? Yeah. Could I tell you what they are? I'm not sure.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, though.
Councilmember Carlson.
Clearly, I have a lot of questions. This is my first rodeo, so can you explain to me or just identify what, I'm looking at the budget book, the increase in investment advisor fees expense, like what is that expense? And help me understand how it is budget neutral.
Yeah, so we do our investments two ways. The state invests a portion of our cash, and then we also have our own investors. That expense used to be just a direct offset, so it would be we'd net it with revenues. To be more transparent, we put the revenue in and the expense in, so you'll see a revenue for $95,000 and an expense for our investment advisors.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Councilmember Petro.
I was just joking with Councilmember Wharton that you could probably poison me, Mary Beth, because when you speak, I trust it has been vetted so well, and your team is so exceptional. So thank you for all the work. I know this year in particular was difficult. On page 194 of our budget book, under funding sources, it looks like there's a new funding source that is going into effect this year, the Property Tax Pass-Through Fund. Can you explain to me what that is?
Sure. So I had an aha moment probably 4 weeks ago, and I was like, holy smokes, how am I going to get the library their funding? Because the library no longer is a taxing entity, and that's $33 million. One of the things that we've had a really hard time with in explaining is the revenues that we see inside our property taxes for the CRA. Now I'm going to have the revenues for the CRA, I'm going to have the revenues for the library, I'm going to have the revenues for Inland Port, I'm going to have the revenues for the convention hotel, which amounts to about $66 million. It overinflates our revenues, it also overinflates our expenses, but it's not very transparent. So we created a new fund that will roll up into the general fund that has both revenues and expenses that will offset the revenues for the library, for the CRA, for Inland Port, and for the convention hotel. It will also have a direct expense offset. So if you looked at last year's budget, you would see our budget started at $512 million, and this year it looks like it's at $498. It's because we pulled the CRA revenue out of there, put it into the property tax pass-through account, and we also pulled the expenses out of there and put it in the property tax pass-through account. It's more transparent for us to see exactly how much money we have available to fund the expenditures inside the general fund.
I really, really, really appreciate this because the authorities, as anyone who has seen my soapbox riding knows, is one of the things that I can't seem to get constituents to care about, although with MIDA in the news, they're starting to care about them a little more. Thank you. This is a really, really helpful tool for explaining to constituents and separating out a little more clearly. Thank you.
I think it became crystallized, especially this year after last year's interpretation by the tax commission that the library is not a separate taxing entity. And so that became a very real challenge for the city to figure out how do we recognize that revenue without owning the revenue, so to speak, because it's not our revenue to own, right? It's got to go back to the library for their operations. And so I think this is a nice way to just solve all of that challenge, all of that transparency challenge, but the library being a core of it.
Is there any of the UFair district revenue in here as well?
No.
Okay.
And it's only property tax, so it's not sales tax, it's not
The telecoms, any
right,
of the others?
any
that
of the
were
other, it's
deprived of?
just property tax because we are the taxing entity for the property tax for all of those areas. I just think it makes it more transparent.
Yeah, thank you.
There are several districts too, though, that, and I think UFair is one. You asking the question is making me think that the legislation was written in a way where the revenue is directly given to them, not as an entity. So it doesn't come through the city like the revenue for the CRA does. So it goes directly to UFair. So all of those are just directed.
Redirected away from us. Yeah. Council members? No more presentation. I think that, let me check that you're not next again. No, you're not. Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, council.
The item number 6 also, which is the budget for sustainability department and the refuse fund, will be adjusted to a future meeting. Those are the changes that we made today. This, we decided to start it later. Then there is, we have a break, but will you be open to continuing the meeting? Is that okay, since it's been a short meeting so far?
The Justice Court isn't here yet?
It's
I
just-
don't
it's
know
Justice
if the
Court.
Justice Court is here yet. Michael was going to reach out to them. Have we heard back from them? Okay, we have not heard back from them yet. They actually might have court, so I'm trying to
makes sense.
extend some grace that maybe they're double booked.
The impact schedule, a number.
That's just informational, and maybe I'll just take the opportunity to direct council members. You can pull it up on the online packet materials. It just has to appear at every meeting by state law. And it goes exactly through what Mary Beth covered in her overview. It calculates the percentage of increase, the impact on an average home, the impact on $1 million business, and then what exactly that revenue would be used for. We will update that schedule if and when the council decides to make changes to it.
Where was this was posted obviously on the online as required. Is that the only requirement of the law?
It's required to be officially presented to the council, so that happened last Tuesday. And then it will appear on every work session where you guys are talking about the budget. So we'll have it on every work session essentially from here till June. We will have it as part of the materials for our budget public hearings. So it'll be part of like the materials that the public could look at if they want to come and talk to you guys. And then the law requires you guys to adopt a version of this. So we will update it with whatever the council ends up deciding in early to mid-June, and then that notice will go to the tax commission and the county in advance of the August truth and taxation hearing, where everything will finally be final.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
That law that we were discussing that trigger all of this new process this year. It's an interesting place for all municipalities to be right now. But I also know that we have. I received my notice in my mailbox from the city council telling us about the budget discussions. I know that this council goes beyond, and the city goes beyond informing our neighbors about the budget and the impact and the proposed budget. So, what else do we do? Maybe that's an important little brief thing to highlight right now.
I'll need to double check with our comms team, but I think I agree with you that we do a great job trying to make what is a pretty dense bit of information very accessible and understandable for general public. We are talking about doing a second postcard for the second budget hearing. I'm hoping Lehua pops in and corrects me if I'm wrong, but I'm not positive about that. But in addition to the mailing that went out, what we're really hoping that people do is use our budget hub, our fiscal year 27 budget hub, as the place for all information as it updates, especially as council members continue your deliberations and your, so all of this information will be found on the budget hub if it's not there already. In fact, I'm pretty sure it's there already. And that is really the place where we're driving people to because it'll have the most updated information and the most updated kind of requirements. Hi, can you correct me? Where did we land on the extra mailing for that second hearing?
So the communications team has the postcard ready. I think we were waiting to super confirm that it was not required in the state legislation. And then it's ready to go out if council members would like it to go out, but we don't need to do it because it was on the citywide mailer that the administration prepared.
And how can neighbors access the budget hub? Is there a short address to that? Or is that very
Yes,
long?
and I can't remember which version is ours, but I can
think that would be wonderful to list. Maybe this is the one, right? link.slc.gov/SLCFY27.
Yes, yes, it is. It's on the agendas,
So-
it's on our homepage. Yes.
Yes.
And it is also, the administration included it on that postcard that was delivered to all city residents and property owners, so it is on there as well.
Okay, that one works very well. So it's link.slc.gov/SLCFY27.
And we have included it in all of our budget staff reports as well, so that if someone's reading a budget staff report, they'll see that link there. And yeah, I do think that's the safe, I mean, when anyone asks me like where they can find most of the information about the budget, that's where I've just been telling people to go, because I think it's most comprehensive. The administration also keeps a budget.
And has the mayor's recommended budget information on there, staff reports as they're updated, and other engagement information, including a lot of more information on the utility bills and rate calculators and such like that.
I think because we don't have the next item, the people that present the next item, we should take a 10-minute break and see if we can make it happen. So come back at 3:30. Thank you. as the city council right now. We are reconvening as the city council right now. We're going to move on to item number 7, which is the fiscal year 2026-2027 budget discussion for the Justice Court. Welcoming to Michael Sanders, Council Policy Analyst, to give us a short introduction and an introduction of the members at the table.
Okay, great. Thank you, Council. So the FY 2027 Justice Court budget is proposed to be $7,538,063. This is an increase of about $1.2 million, or a 19.90% increase. The budget includes continued funding for the 9 FTEs approved in the FY 26 Budget Amendment number 4. Additionally, the budget proposes adding 10 months of funding for 4 judicial assistants and 1 justice court manager. This would bring the justice court's FTE count to 53. The additions amounts to $432,000 in funding, which would be contingent upon approval of a proposed property tax increase. Additional information on diversion efforts, performance measures, and workload can be found in your packets. There's policy questions located on the bottom portion of page 2 of the staff report. And with that, I'll yield the floor to the Justice Court.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for giving us a time to be with you today. I'm JoJo Liu. I'm currently presiding judge at the Justice Court. On behalf of Kate Fairchild, our director, she apologizes for her absence. She is really very ill today, and so we will be standing in on her behalf.
I'm Valita Hitchcock. I'm the financial manager of the Justice Court.
And so there is a presentation which I will go over. I'm just going to hit the highlights. I want to make sure there's enough time for questions from the council members. So do I advance this? Or do I? Okay, next slide. All right, so I think the council members are all aware of the mission of the Justice Court, what we're trying to achieve in terms of outcomes. Next slide. So this is in our annual report, I believe in briefing also provided to the council. Some of our accomplishments that we wanted to highlight this year includes all of those listed. I think this is perhaps too detailed to go into detail at this point. I'm very happy to circle back, provide any more details or texture for folks who are interested in any of these items. Next slide. And so there was, and I think this has previously been shared with the council at the time the court came before it in terms of the budget, the mid-year budget amendment. There has been many efforts to be able to find efficiencies, reorganize without having to ask for additional budget from the council prior. We also have found certain efficiencies. We have taken advantage in a lot of areas of grant funding without needing to be able to increase capacity without having to ask for additional funding from the city. Other areas of efficiencies. Next slide. And this provides the overview as to what the request scenario is for this budget year. Next slide. Yeah, I'll try to lead on this.
Just briefly on this one, this is just a more detailed explanation of the current budget and all the changes, and then that $7.5 million that was previously mentioned. So again, any questions when we circle back, I'd be happy to give you more detail. Next slide. These next 2 slides are just some bullet points on our need for the additional staff that we're asking for. This talks about the 5 additional staff. This is for 10 months of the year. And then the next slide talks about the additional operating expenses in relation to BA4 that we were given that increase our budget as well. These are mostly be used for things like interpreter, jury fees, things that are related to that 6th judge that we've received budgeting for. Next slide. And so in terms of some of the changes that have
been the underlying reason why the court has needed to come first for the mid-year budget amendment and then now for the remaining items. We have a projected increase of 85% in criminal filings over that 10-year period. There's been a 37% increase as between July 25 and February 26. A projected increase of 170% in criminal case hearings during that 10-year period, 135% in hearings during that July 25 to February 26 period. Our criminal time to disposition has slowed. That's not a good thing. We aim to be disposing of cases consistent with the state standard of 95%. That has been steadily going downward because, and it's correlated with the increase in the caseload that we have. Similarly, with our criminal case clearance rate, we want to be at 100%. We're not close to that, and that has been proportionally and it's correlated directly with our increase in caseload. And is that the last slide?
There's
okay.
some charts and graphs on the next few slides.
And so this is just a visual depiction of the changes in criminal case filings over that 10-year period. Next slide. And this is a change in the number of hearings. So the reason why this is not a one-on-one is because as our system becomes over its capacity, each hearing becomes increasingly less efficient. The number of continuances that result, the number of touches that have to happen for any given case sort of increases exponentially per case filed. That's why you're seeing the number of hearings being greater than the number of increases in filings. Next slide. And then this is the staffing proposal. This is what it would look like. And what we've asked for here is, I think represents the, I think it's the
Functional, is it, or is it this one?
I think it's the first one.
Yeah, there.
And so
You're right, Bear.
it's the bare minimum staffing. So the council had asked us to lay this out in terms of how we see the staffing that's necessary for the courts. We identified, this has been quite some time, as the bare minimum staffing is the staffing that we're asking for with the budget amendment plus what's being requested in this budget year. And so the ask for this fiscal year is just the remaining items on the bare minimum staffing. And with that, we're very happy to yield the floor to any questions.
Council members? Yes, Councilmember Young.
So thank you for this. And you guys have really done an incredible job of thoughtfully educating us and creating opportunities for us to both be on site with you, to kind of see the constraints of even your current space related to the employees you have, and walking through some of the data in more detail. And I'm really grateful for that. I think my question comes back to your last slide related to, like, we're at bare minimum staffing. And so the difference you see between that versus functional versus kind of what an ideal state would look like. Can you just help me, kind of capture like what the differences are at those levels, just for my awareness as we look not just to this fiscal year, but also future fiscal years?
So by definition, this requires a little bit of speculation and projection on our part, right? So there are certain factors that are more able to be predicted. That are things like population growth. Things like, if you look historically, what have been the changes in the growth at our court. That part of it is part of what is built in here. That if we are to expect the same kind of incremental growth time, then in order for us to not have to come back year after year, but instead be planning out for more of a 5-10 year horizon, then if we're able to capture functional or a more ideal staffing, then we anticipate that we don't need to come back, anytime soon for additional FTEs. as you know, a lot of what matters for our caseload is entirely outside of our control. It has to do with policy that, of course, is not the business of the court. We only respond to the amount of cases that come before us. With that, it's not, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't think anyone else does. I think I can say that I do feel optimistic that with a lot of the investments happening at the state level, at the city level, at the county level, in housing, behavioral health, and most importantly, coordination between the criminal justice partners, I really hope that we do see a decrease in the resources that we're asking from the city over time. I hope that we're really capturing that. And so in order to get there, right, because we're at a time of just an incredible large caseload and not yet capturing some of that problem solving and efficiencies that we hope to see over time. And all the agencies need some extra capacity in order to even be involved in that problem solving, even to be able to involved in that collaboration. And so I think that the functional staffing represents where we would want to be able to fully capture the efficiencies that we hope really are going to be a part of the presentations to the council over time. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate it, especially just the context over not necessarily having hard data and using those estimates, but also being thoughtful about not wanting to be in the cycle of sitting in a chair year after year being like, so now we need, and really looking ahead. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Council members? Councilmember Petro.
I'm going to ask a question that might not be in your purview, but I was checking in non-departmental with the legal defenders. And so we know that even if you have enough judges, and even if you were magically at that sustainable level, if we don't have the defense there, are you optimistic that what we're doing is going to be able, that we're investing strategically to make sure that your goals are achievable because of those factors outside of you as well?
So my understanding is that the budget requests were made in coordination across the three agencies, and so they line up with each other. And so to the extent to which the investments are being made as part of that package, then the answer is yes. I mean, it makes no sense to fund the Justice Court with, the work of the court is brought to us, is litigated. The problem solving happens largely in terms of the investigation that prosecutors are able to do, the work that LDA is able to do with their clients, their work together in crafting a global resolution. Only then does it come before the court. And so those are really threshold resources.
And then I understand the reason for separations, but are we able to coordinate a little more to find efficiencies on things like my constituents, their top two concerns when it comes to the courts are making sure that people have access to legal representation and fair process, so that goes to the staffing part. And then the second one they said almost equally was connecting individuals to supportive services. And so in my district, we're all, those are the things. Have there been coordinations to see if we can find efficiencies moving forward with that too? I know all of you over there care about the people who you interact with, so.
Absolutely. I would say that our criminal justice interagency partners have a very strong historical relationship of collaboration. And I will also say that that's been increasingly harder to do, and not because of personalities or people or the quality of relationships. It's just the stress on the system. Because to the extent to which there's low-hanging fruit on solving problems, we have found those low-hanging fruits. And so then as you're thinking about, okay, what's the next level in terms of how we can problem solve across our system, that by definition is going to be a pain point that is disproportionately borne by one agency, depending on what the idea is, right? And historically, we've always been able to do that for each other. We've always been able to say, that's a great idea, that does improve the system overall. The fact that it creates X amount of wear and tear now on these judicial assistants, the court can offer because we want to solve problems for everybody. Increasingly, everybody is not in a position to do that, and that's because of the caseload.
So then just one more, does this bare minimum staffing get you to a place where you're able to take enough pressure off the system so that you can return to that, not just day-to-day survival, but a little more strategic, or is that where the functional staffing gets us?
I think we can make it work with the bare minimum.
Could I add one thing on the talking about the staffing and such that we were just talking about? We are also in the process of working on getting an NCS grant, which is going to be a 5 to 10 year strategic plan for us to better lay out what our needs are going to be and how we can perform better. And we also want to just mention that over the past 10 years that we're kind of, that period that we're talking about, we haven't added any FTEs.
That's a good point.
Councilmember Carson.
I just wanted to really iterate, some of the data points that stood out to me in your presentation. A projected 85% increase in filings from, 2016 to 2026, a 37% increase in criminal case filings over the past year, projected increase of 117% in criminal case hearings from 2016 to 2026, and 0 increase in FTE since 2016. So I just wanted to point out that those are some statistics that really shell-shocked me a little bit in terms of the strain the system has been under.
I definitely I would like to agree, and I often focus on the balancing between the public defense and access to that and the prosecution, balancing those two. But it's as important to make sure that the system works, and that they have the resources to dedicate the time and the focus in an efficient way. And doing it correctly. So it is unfortunate that we don't have the resources to at the moment to really give you all that you need. There's a lot of constraints right now, but we as the body we have many times talked about how important this is to us and to the residents of the city. So we definitely very supportive generally about the Justice Court requests right now. So certainly we're going to be debating and discussing more about the budget and making final decision soon. Yes, go ahead.
I've kind of made an executive decision to flag whenever we are hearing from a department that is part of the property tax increase proposal, that I'll make sure to flag that for you guys. So the Justice Court has 2 line items that are part of the property tax proposal totaling $430,000. There's related increases in the prosecutor's office for 2 legal assistants totaling $127,000, and then $961,000 in non-departmental for legal defenders. I think we talked about this as like a system-wide need. So that total amount for in the property tax increase is $1.5 million. So that would be a placeholder for September 1 when that would become effective. So just disclosing that.
And I would like to flag maybe for a longer conversation about the needs, the physical needs of the courts. And I think this conversation has come to us quite often related to spacing multiple departments and with the Leonardo and all of these other buildings coming back to the city. I think that there is a question that is probably beyond the Justice Courts alone, but I really would like a briefing at some point about how are we going to move all these Lego pieces that are very important to the function of the city to find efficiencies, and certainly a question for costs and how we're going to make an argument to the residents of Salt Lake City of what are we going to do here. Again, thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for allowing us to move around the agenda today. We'll try our best here. And again, please share with all the staff of the Justice Court how valued they are from this City Council. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Council members, I think that concludes the items for discussion right now, but we have proposed a closed meeting. And I will need a motion for that. And,
Is this for the purpose of advice of council?
discuss collective bargaining, strategy sessions to discuss collective bargaining, and strategy session to discuss pending and unreasonable imminent litigation. Yeah, yes, and if you can add the personal and professional competence of an individual.
You remember all this?
Yeah, I can, or you can, either one.
You go.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I move that we enter a closed meeting for the purpose of discussing labor negotiations, strategy of reasonably imminent litigation, and to discuss the personal competency of an employee, and to receive advice of counsel.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Wharton and a second by Councilmember Dugan. I'm going to call the question. Councilmember Young,
Aye.
Councilmember Petro,
Aye.
Councilmember Wharton,
Aye.
Councilmember Carlson,
Aye.
Councilmember Dugan.
Aye.
And I am aye as well. This is a motion that goes unanimous to close the meeting. And we are going to adjourn after that closed session. So thank you for all of those that are tuned in for this meeting. Thank you.